relax. Take a few deep breaths. And join the group from your center. The medicine wheel is, as much as anything, a teaching device. The elders will put many different things into a medicine wheel and use it to explain whatever it is they wish to speak of. And this month, I want to speak of mind, body, spirit, and emotions, all through the lens of the medicine wheel. And I will use the Cree medicine wheel. There are many others, and it doesn't matter because the medicine wheel is a teaching device, not an absolute truth as far as natives are concerned. The Cree place our minds, our reasoning ability, our rationality in the West, the land of the Thunderbird and the Eastern Rockies. And they put it there partially because the color there is dark. It's black. Although most of the wheels will show dark navy blue, when you talk to the elders, the color is black in the West. That is nightfall, the time of thoughtfulness, recollection, reflection. And there are two important things I want to talk about tonight and get you guys to talk about. Our thoughts, our beliefs, our understandings, and those are well represented by the iceberg because our conscious thoughts are there above the water. And that really is not even close to the whole thing. And then we have a subconscious, which is below the waterline, but where the light still shines in some. We know a bit about that. It's part of our consciousness sometimes and sometimes not. And then we have the unconscious, that which we know nothing. Still us, still our beliefs, still our thoughts, but we don't know what they are. Now we can account for that in many different kinds of ways: repression because of trauma, denial out of fear, perhaps past lives, perhaps karma influencing this lifetime from past lifetimes. So that's one part of what's going on in our consciousness and our mind, is this set of ideas and beliefs and thoughts. But there's another set that's equally important that we almost never talk about. And that's, how do we decide which thoughts to believe, which ideas to accept, which rules to obey? What are those? Well, what are the rules you use to filter your thoughts? Right now, we live in a world and a country where there's an enormous disagreement. We have conspiracy theories all over the place, and people believe them. I'll wait for Kathleen to get the phone. But most of the time, most people don't look at what the rules they use themselves to decide what's true and what's not true. When AA says, just do the next right thing, how do you decide what the next right thing is? Now, I have what I've shared often, some filters for what I believe and how I filter stuff out, but be mindful of the fact that I can't filter about what's in the unconscious. If I don't know it's there, I have no tool to filter it out and expose it and see what it is. But the simplest rule for me is for any idea, any belief, any suggestion is, does it work for me? Does it make my life better? Does that belief serve me? Does that belief make me happier, more loving, kinder, quieter, better centered, more serene? That's my first rule for deciding whether or not I want to accept some piece of information as true or not. And so I'm going to ask each of you then to share what your rules are, or at least a rule that you use to filter out and decide, what are you going to believe? How do you decide that? What are you going to believe? And with that, I turn the stick in and I will let you volunteer, and then I will begin to pick people who haven't volunteered.
Shall I pick up the stick?
Stick is yours.
It's very interesting, Ksitew, because what you said are the words very close to the words I use also. The way I think is a long time ago when people used to think of positive thinking, which naturally means that there's therefore negative thinking. I said that we must think the thought that serves us. And it doesn't mean the us is not the small self or the local self. It's the sense which is what our purpose is. When I know what my central purpose is, then I see which does the thought that I'm having serve that central purpose or not. If it serves it, it doesn't matter whether it's positive or negative. I have to accept it and go with it. But if it doesn't serve it, then I must look for the higher truth. In my youth, what served me very well was to think that there are so many ways of finding the truth in the world. I was on a quest for truth. And for me, what was truth at that time is what's universal. So if everyone feels a certain way, then it must be true. And if some people feel that you should not wash clothes during the eclipse, but others don't feel that, then I have to look for a deeper truth behind that. So those are my thoughts, and I pass the stick back.
Hey, thank you. I had a teacher say something very much like that to me once. The university hired what they called a super trainer to help me with adult education because I had no experience with adult education. I'd worked in aerospace with engineers and I wasn't educating anybody. We were just trying to get somebody on the moon. And he wanted to know what I knew about groups. And I'd had, group psychology, and I had been to leadership conferences by the Episcopal Church that focused on groups. And, so I'll start out and I'm telling him all this stuff about good behavior in groups. Groups, behavior which facilitated the group getting things done. And he listened quietly. And then I said, and then the bad behaviors, and he stopped me dead. And he said, there are no bad behaviors in a group. He said, there are only behaviors with predictable consequences. And the day will come when you are sitting in a group and you can see that it's heading for a decision that you really disagree with and think is bad for the group, but you're on the losing end of all the arguments. And if you're smart, you'll pull out one of those so-called bad behaviors, and you will disrupt the decision-making in the group by that behavior and postpone the decision until people have time to rethink. I thought about that. There's no such thing as good behavior or bad behavior in a group, just behavior that has predictable results. I think that's what you're saying, in some sense, that worked for you in terms of sorting out whether you should wash clothes under eclipse or not. Who's next? Sticks in. And by the way, that's another one of my thought
Well,
filters.
this is a Hoan, and I was awaiting off because that's a very loud background noise. And and I've been contemplating, well, how is it that I make decisions? And that is a really good question. So I recall when I stepped into Science of Mind with Ernest Holmes and Science of Mind treatment, and this idea that there's the one creator, the one mind, and you have the different layers, the collective, the subconscious, the conscious, and you can choose what you want to believe. And I remember going through all of that and picking the ones that felt good and that felt true, that felt real to me. And this idea that, okay, there's a God and you decide what God is to you. Is God a condemning God, or is God a loving God? What kind of a God do you have? And well, I chose the loving God. It feels good. And now, so when I would go to beliefs would come up, or I see that I'm believing something that maybe I really don't choose to believe, and I can change that belief. There's a process or a what we call a spiritual mind treatment with the Science of Mind, and now it's kind of an automatic for me. It's like, well, wait a minute, what do I believe my God is? What do I believe I am? And go with that. Other than that, it is when I am in the moment, I am moving along in the moment, and I'm doing what comes along in the flow. It's kind of like when I'm on the motorcycle, I know I'm headed to Albuquerque, or I'm headed to a particular destination. I'm punching that in. I'm seeing, feeling, believing, knowing I'm going to arrive safely. Anything happens along the way, you know, it is meant to happen, and we'll work through it. Be for the highest good of all. Then you hit the, all right, let's go. And this is when the journey begins, and you just kind of go with what's in the moment and keeping your eye on that destination. It's kind of like the ship. So, and there's something in my ear that is telling me, okay, turn left, turn right, go 6 miles, turn left, turn right, go 5 miles, that kind of thing. And sometimes, you know, the direction will come at the last minute. Sometimes it's, okay, well, I got 10 miles to go before the next thing is going to happen, or the next turn is going to be made. For me, it is it's a heart guidance. It's a keeping my thoughts geared on the truth that I know to be true, which comes from the universal principles, and navigating from that point as at a given moment, and feel what I'm supposed to feel in that moment. Many times if I personally start looking at the, okay, how am I going to do all of this and the decisions to be made, I get it's overwhelming. And so it's, okay, give me one direction, one at a time, and I can give 100% focus on that. I don't know if that's what you're looking for or what the answer, but that's the way I see and feel it. And I'll toss the stick back in.
Okay. Actually, I'm not looking for anything except what your rules are. Your rules. I know what mine are mostly. I was thinking back, you know, it used to be, what did I know was true and not? Well, it was what the adults told me was true or not. That's what I knew. And that's what I believed, you know. If they said, you know, it's really bad to lie, I believed them. I believed them. And a few times I tried out lying, it didn't work out very well for me, so I believed my experience as well. Tree, what are your rules for believing and not believing?
Well, I could comment a bit on what Helen said. It just confused me a bit. Just you said when she goes on a journey, she would just kind of go with the flow. Basically, if something bad happens in the middle of it, she'll just deal with it. I'm summarizing, but so how do you? So then, do you pray for a safe journey? Do you ask for help along the way? Some people bubble up so that they don't have any problems along the way. It's interesting. Then why would you want to do something like that if you want the problem and want to deal with it? It's just a little mind-boggling to me, but I guess that's where I got a little confused, but that's how I was thinking.
Do you want me to comment on that?
Sure.
Okay. For me, say I'm getting ready to start on the journey. I do this when I start my day. I do this periodically throughout the day. For me, it is a stopping and a centering and going, okay, there's one creator. I know this creator to be peaceful. I know this creator to be harmonious. I know this creator is flowing through me. It's flowing through this motorcycle. It's also this road. It is everybody that is traveling on the roads. And I know without a doubt that spirit flows this in a safe, harmonious way for everybody, that I am seen and everybody respects each other on the journey and reaching the destination in a safe and beautiful way. This machinery operates perfectly. It's that claiming and feeling and just feeling and knowing that. And then because I do have a relationship with the ravens, the crows, the hawks, etc., they will fly and give me little signals, and I'll go, oh, okay, hey, thank you very much. In other words, be a little more alert coming around this next bend. There's, you know, and there may be a stone in the road. There may be a car that might start to come over the line, but I've felt it. I saw that signal. I'm a little more alert, and I navigate through it. It's not that I'm expecting anything to take place, but if something does take place, I've also shared, you know, spirit knows how to operate this motorcycle. And so I'm not doing, this is your journey. Here's my hands and feet. Let's take this journey. Use them as you need to make. And many times when I have had a flat tire or I've had something come up, I don't, it's like something takes over. I have no idea how it happens, but it happens. And then navigate, and I land on my 2 feet, 2 wheels up, all is good and well, and nobody's injured. So I remember sharing this story at the children's schools in India, and I shared it more of a story around, you know, somebody taking off on their motorbike, and they fed the ravens and they prayed to the ravens, and you know, they get on their motorcycle, and one day got up late in a hurry, did not feed the ravens, didn't pray, hopped on the motorcycle, and the ravens didn't alert that something was going to take place. And boom, you know, broken leg, blah, 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 blah. So then she goes around, you know, and she makes a big, huge plate, asks for forgiveness. I'm so sorry, I forgot to pray to you, da 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 da. And the kids really appreciated that, because it's just that reminder to set the stage, to toss the rainbow before the storm, so to speak, or to offer that tobacco, offer those prayers. And so I'll stop there. I hope I answered your question, Teresa.
Welcome, Nina. You're muted. We can't hear you yet. You're
Oh,
still
I'm
muted.
sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry I was late. I just moved to my new place and I'm still accommodating myself.
Well, you're welcome even late.
Thank you.
Our topic tonight is mind. And right now we're talking about what rules do we use to decide what is true and not true? What rules do you use to decide what you want to believe and what you don't want to believe? And you're welcome to jump in.
Okay.
I will put back our iceberg.
I'd rather keep listening right now.
Okay, that's fine. Does Mom have anything to say here? How does Mom decide what's true and what's not true?
How do you decide what's true or not true? Go ahead, Mom. How do you decide what's the truth?
About what? About what?
About what?
Anything at all?
I don't know the answer.
That's not unusual. I suspect that the vast majority of people seldom ask themselves how they decide. I remember being with a bunch of sixth graders at Beaver Crossing in Alberta. Mute that, please, Teresa. We're getting feedback again. Thank you. I was with a bunch of sixth graders in Beaver Lake. And these are Chipewyan children. And they did not believe that men had been on the moon. There wasn't any question. They were certain it was a Hollywood production, and they saw the videos on television, and they heard the speeches, and and to their mind, it was no more real than Bugs Bunny on Saturday morning. No, and they decided. I don't know what they were using for the decision. Maybe they just didn't believe anybody could ever get to the moon. These are what, sixth graders, or maybe 11 years old, that age roughly. And nobody was asking them, how do you decide what's true and what's not true? I am offered, just today, I had people tell me to be very careful about getting the second shot for COVID-19 vaccination. Be careful, they said. What does that mean? I don't know what it means to be careful. Does that mean show up on time? Does that mean, what does it mean? You're telling me to be careful, but I don't know what you mean. And one woman finally said, oh, I'm sorry, I meant have somebody there with you because you may not feel well afterwards and you'll want somebody else to drive you. And I thanked them for that. But somebody else told me I needed to not get it because it was very risky and I'd probably die. And I don't doubt they were trying to be helpful, but I had to believe, well, is that a true statement or is that a not true statement? Is that what's in my interest or is that not what's in my interest? We all make these kinds of decisions all the time. And most people, I think, do not look at those decision-making rules that they have. Do you believe the doctors? No, I know for me individually, maybe I do, maybe I don't. Collectively, generally speaking, yeah, I trust the doctor, I trust the medical profession. Do I trust individual doctors? I don't know. Some of them I get along with, some of them I don't get along with, but I'm more likely to trust them than an anonymous person on Facebook who, who are they? I don't know who they are. I know people say they are so-and-so. So how do you know what to believe? And ultimately, I think it comes down for me to some personal internal sense. And the first rule was the one Nina missed, but I'll repeat it. When a new idea pops up, does this make my life better? Will I be a more centered person? Will I be a more loving person? Will I be a more joyful person? And if the answer to that question is no, then I have to ask myself, well, why in the devil do you want to believe that? Why do I want to believe something that's going to make me miserable or unhappy or even more fearful? Right now, there's a lot of fear out in the world because of the disease and other things. And people are making a lot of decisions based on fear. And it's hard to say they ought not be doing that. On the other hand, if you decide to live in fear, fear is a really bad master. Okay, well, that's it for rules. Now let me talk about something else. There's all this stuff underwater, that stuff down there at the bottom of that iceberg. We don't know what it is. We really don't know what it is. That's why we call it unconscious. How do we find out what's down there? How do you find out what's down there? And there's a lot of paths to that. Meditation, vision questing, drugs in some cases. For me, I think the most useful one for finding out what's down there is what irritates me. If something really gets under my skin, I'm dealing with some part of me that's afraid of something. And if I'm afraid of something, that's by definition for me an unhealed issue. What have I got to be afraid of? No. And those of you who know me well get tired of having me say, if somebody gets under your skin, you should accept them as your teacher and respect them for that. Don't start a war with them, because whether they intend to or not, they're actually helping you. They're showing you pieces of yourself that are down there at the bottom of that iceberg that you don't know are there, and they get you. And it's taken me a long time to appreciate that. I recognize that that is not a simple thing to do. It's much easier to strike back when you feel like you're being attacked. I think there's hardly a human on earth that doesn't believe that the best defense is a really good offense. And when somebody says something snarky, we tend to snark right back at them. No. And if we're really afraid of them, we'll get them when they're not looking. No. And I had to come to, my terms. Do I want to, AA asked me that question the first time and I didn't like it. But do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And I really believed if I could be right, I would be happy. But when you're in a relationship with somebody, if one of you is right and the other is wrong, you've established a relationship that's unhealthy. It's not a relationship of equals. It's a relationship between a genius and an idiot in extremes. And that isn't a good relationship. People can dance that way for their entire lives, but that doesn't mean they're going to be happy or fulfilled or joyful. So how do you guys find out what's down there at the bottom of that iceberg that's by definition not part of your consciousness mind? Stuff you're really not aware of. And with that, I'll put the stick back.
Okay, I'll pick it up. I think that we can't really know whether we have reached the unconscious or not just because of the virtue of it being unconscious, but a way of reaching as deep as possible into what I'm not aware of, I feel, is when we sit in silence and in as peaceful a way as possible. Also, I know nowadays there is lots of music which can reach different parts of your brain waves. The best music, of course, is the ocean, or just sitting out in nature. But if a person can't do that, then I think these these bits of music are very wonderful. Another thing that I think is because they say that the unconscious is, as Jung called it, the collective unconscious. That is the state, that is the, uh, those are the thoughts and those are the feelings that humanity as a whole may carry. So once again, maybe it's that when what I talked about, seeing that something is true, if most people feel it or believe it or think it, then it seems to be maybe we are reaching that collective unconscious. And I also wanted to say something which I always think about when you say that if someone gets under your skin, then they've come as your teacher. So I was thinking about a thing that's really got under my skin, probably in childhood, and that's, let's say, a thorn. I used to walk barefoot a lot out in the garden. And so if a thorn comes in, I don't really want to know what it teaches me, except that it teaches me not to walk in a certain place. But I want to take, and I will take it out. I don't think at that time anyone will say you should let the thorn stay there and wander all over you. So I'm also remembering the story which I think you shared once before, in which a person who's drowning and said that God will save him, and uh, and every time a boat comes and he says, "No, you don't have to save me because God will save me," and God said, "Well, I sent you all those boats." Like and dislike, pain, these are not made by human beings. We don't choose what to like and dislike. It's something very natural to us. What if this natural is exactly given to us to show us what we should move towards and what we should move away from?
Okay. The notion of the collective, I'm looking at the image and I'm saying maybe that the water the iceberg is in is representative of that. It's in full contact, and every piece of it except that that's in the air is fully enclosed in that collective need or that collective belief system. And I do think cultures vary so that we actually have very different collective surrounds. But yeah, I like that notion. I was thinking of another thing that, when I was studying Course in Miracles, when I first started, I found some of the lessons in the workbook difficult. And I was very conscientious about it, so I did them again the next day. And sometimes they were still difficult. I wasn't getting it quite, so I did it again the third day. And I continued that way for perhaps the first 60 or 70 lessons. And then I ran into one I really liked. And I thought, it's a lot more fun if I do this one again, too. And so I started doing the ones I really liked again. And as a result, it took me 15 months to get through the 365 lessons in the text. And when I was finished, I had met a group of people who had also been students of the course, and they looked at me and said, "What was your hurry?" And I thought, what was my hurry? I was poking along, doing the lessons over and over again, either because I didn't get them or because I really did get them and I liked them a lot. And that's part of that decision making, that's part of what is the rule there. I like it. I don't like it. What makes it worthwhile to climb the learning curve? I mean, if there's something that frustrates human beings, it's climbing that learning curve. It can be so difficult and we can get so lost. And the world is changing so rapidly that sometimes it's just impossible to keep up. What is that background noise? It sounds like a sipping. Anybody on a straw? Thank you. Whoever fixed it, thank you. So that's another way in which we make decisions about, what do we like and what we don't we like. I studied psychology when I first went to university and got my first degree in psychology. And one of the things we studied was the Rorschach test, the ink blots, and if you look at the ink blots, they have no meaning. They're just ink blots. They inherently are meaningless. But you ask people to look at them and they see things in them. And by thousands of observations about what people see in them, you begin to be able to use it as a test to tell what their personality is and what kinds of problems they're having and that kind of thing. I came to the conclusion a couple of years back that our whole world, at least mine, is one big Rorschach test. What do I like? What don't I like? This is not quite the same thing as the person who gets under my skin, but it's close. Because there's nothing personal about my environment. I mean, the tree's not out to get me if I don't like it. Whereas the person I might be perceiving differently. But if I don't like something, there's always a question of, well, what am I afraid of? What is the standard by which I am repulsed by that? And I recall when I was very early in my college education, I was taking a class in physiological anthropology, and the professor got a corpse. And that was very unusual. I was in a community college. They didn't normally have corpses available for dissection. And we had to share it with the nursing department, but we got to dissect the hand. And I watched that happen, and I was thinking, holy smokes, you want to believe in miracles, look at the way our hands are put together. While I'm there, high as a kite, because of the pleasure and understanding I'm getting from looking at this, my fellow students, some of them are fainting because it's a corpse and they're cutting into it and all of those potential aspects. And here I am, enthralled, absolutely enthralled, because this is a marvelous, marvelous creation. How do we decide those things? And what do we do about them when we find that there's stuff we really don't like? I know what we do when we like stuff. We consume it. I could prove it by my waistline. So how do you handle deciding what you like and don't like about your environment? How do you decide you want to move a picture? You're going to change the placing in the couch. You're going to don't like the color of the car. I mean, there's 1,000 decisions we make over and over and over again based on something. What is that something for you? And Nina, you've been listening long enough. I invite you to share.
How do I choose what to like or not like? If that was the question.
Yeah, sure.
Depends the situation. I don't like lizards at all, and I moved to a place that are full of lizards. But I start like admire the things they do for the environments, like they eat all the insect, and I start looking to a better, in a different way. So I don't like them, but I like another part of them. So I try to balance in all kind of situation if I can, like to see the yin and the yang and to put the balance, even though I don't like it, but to find something good in it.
Right. Okay. Balance is an interesting rule.
And I think in everything, in people, most of the thing has the, I mean, I guess all all the situation has yin yang, is whatever I put on my attention, or what I choose to see it more or ignore it. So that's my point of view.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, I guess one more piece to this, because the Cree, as well as I have a good friend who's very knowledgeable about the Bible, and he was telling us one day that the God of his understanding had given us 3 areas where we had the right to control them. And those were our thoughts, which is what we're looking at today, our feelings, and our behavior, our actions. He said, we have sovereignty over those things. That is, our sovereignty has been given to us as by right. However, we are free to give them away. And people frequently do. We often, that's most obvious in our culture, I think, of our fiction. I love the Hallmark movies. And one of the common phrases is, I just want to make you happy. Good luck with that. Happiness is an inside job. This is something we have sovereignty over. But how many people surrender it and say, you make me so happy? And they put the responsibility for their happiness on right smack dab on the shoulders of the person they're talking to. And we have that right. But we need to realize that other people aren't doing it. We are giving them that power. That is our gift to them, which we may not be intending to give, because we also hear, you make me so mad. Yeah. So this question of sovereignty over our minds, we get to choose the rules we want to use to decide what's right and what's wrong. We get to choose the rules we make about what's good for us and what's not good for us. And I don't mean other people don't have lots to say about that, but we ultimately get to choose. Once you become adult, you're no longer the responsibility of your parents. I remember at one of my early Al-Anon meetings hearing somebody say, your problems may have your parents' footprints all over them. And I certainly have known people who can tell you all of the reasons they're screwed up relate to the way their parents treated them or didn't treat them, as the case may be. But they finished that sentence by saying, the solutions have to have your footprints all over them. In other words, your parents aren't going to make you well. They're not going to fix you. My parents are long dead. You know, there's nothing they are going to change that's going to improve any damage that they might have done. I'm not saying they did any, but the reality is, if I want to heal, I have to be responsible for that. I can't look to my parents to change, because my parents can't possibly change. And even if they were still alive, the odds of them changing are pretty remote. They're pretty small. We want to get well, we want to undo whatever damage was done. And And we live in a world where many, many people were abused as children in one way or another. And how do they let go of expecting their parents to change things and make it better and realize that it can't happen? They have to do it. They have to do it. It doesn't mean friends can't help. It doesn't mean therapy can't help. It doesn't mean certain medications can't help. But it does mean that the responsibility for getting well ultimately falls on the individual and not the cause. And that's another one of the rules that we have, or beliefs that we have, that we get to choose. Do we want to continue to blame other people for the way we are? Or do we want to take responsibility? And that's a very difficult issue for a lot of adults. And I certainly had my difficulties wading through it. I mean, I was an alcoholic the first 39 years of my life. So it's not like I don't know what I'm talking about here. But we're back to what we believe. What's back down there in that unconscious area from those days of childhood, those early days? And how do we move past those ideas and recognize them? I realized about 1971, my wife was not faithful. And she was unfaithful with a buddy of mine, which I didn't appreciate much. And I got loaded one night waiting for her to show up, and he showed up, and I tried to kill him. Literally tried to kill him, tried to beat him to death with a club. Well, an air pump, steel air pump. When I was done, I was horrified. I didn't kill him. And he got out of my driveway quick enough that I made a mess of his car, but not of him, for which I am grateful. But I had to think about it because I was horrified. I didn't think I was a murderer. Well, that wasn't my self-image, you know. And I realized I had a really crazy thought. I thought I owned my wife. And he was trying to take her away. And I was going to destroy him to keep him from doing that. And all of that craziness was based on an idea that when it came to light, when it moved up out of the water and into the air, I said, that's insane. I don't believe I own anybody. I don't own my spouse. I don't own my kids. I don't, you know, I'm in relationship with them, but I do not own them. They are not my slaves. They are not my property. But I really believed they were, unconsciously. Unconsciously. And I couldn't change that until it moved up to where it was up here, and I could look at it and say, my God, that is idiotic. You surely don't really believe that. But I did. Down there, deep underwater, I believed that. And for me, that was an eye-opening experience of how I really didn't know myself as well as I thought I did. Now, at that time, I was about 30 years old. So you would think by that time, maybe I had some idea who the hell I was. Forget it. I'm 82 and I still don't know who the hell I am. No. But I think we're given those opportunities to learn what's unconscious and what isn't unconscious. When we engage in extremes of some sort, it doesn't matter what it is. When we engage in an extreme that's unusual for us, which is how you define extreme, then we got a chance to peek at what's down there. We get that chance. And that is a gift. That is a gift. Because if you don't know it's there, you cannot fix it. You cannot change it. You cannot make it better. And that's hard because I have friends who there's so much pain in looking down into that stuff that they don't want to do it. It hurts too much. That's what they say. And who am I to say they're wrong? Maybe they have to come another lifetime or 2 lifetimes or 3 lifetimes to bring that stuff up to the surface. But I think we all have that stuff. We all have these things down, and if we don't look at them, they will drive us. They will motivate us. They will affect our behavior. They will change what we're doing. And so I encourage that it's worth our time and our effort to do some deep mining in our own minds and our own ideas and our own beliefs to see what really works for us and what maybe it's not working so well. No, and it's easy to find out. Start a question about who do you trust? You'll get some interesting answers right away, because very few people trust everybody. And you will begin to get into, yeah, who do I trust? And with that, I'm putting the stick in. We have 4 minutes for people to share, to summarize what they got out of it, and what they didn't get out of it, and anything else they want to say. So, Owen, would you like to start?
Well, the first thing that came to me when you were sharing who do you trust, that was the last thing you spoke about, was who do you trust, and what popped through my mind was, I recall an experience when I left India and was flown into Sri Lanka. And this was the very first time I had actually flown in somewhere where I had no idea where I was going, and I'd only met the lady like one time. And I arrived there and I'm like, okay, I know Creator is also my secretary. And so my secretary was actually in the United States. And so here I look up and she is typing away and navigating where I'm going to be going and the hotel room and how I'm going to get there. And I'm going, oh my gosh, there's my secretary. And then I arrived up in the northern part of Sri Lanka on a train. And I was told that this was an area that had just come out of the Civil War that really nobody had gone into yet. They had just fixed the railroad tracks, and let alone to have a Caucasian come walking in there, a Caucasian female. And so I arrived there, and there's all these rickshaw drivers. And I don't know if some of you are familiar with India, but they're just bombarding you. And they're not necessarily allowed to be over one side of the bar where you come into the train area. Well, this one met me right at the train and said, I will take you, I will take you. And he wasn't caught up with the police, for being on the other side and so forth. But that was my Hanuman showing up. And so at that moment, it made me realize that, okay, I have a secretary, I have a Hanuman, I have a treasurer, I have these different pieces, the doctor, etc. And they are all of the one source. And so it may not be that specific person. And a human can definitely disappoint us, so to speak, if we have our expectations. However, Creator cannot. and creator can move through these different folks and be what needs to be for your journey. So for me, it's not trusting the human or even the dog or the cat. It's trusting in that greater spirit. That's what I wanted to share. So thank you.
Right. Meenakshi?
I already gave a thumbs up for what Owen said. That's exactly what I feel also. I just decided one day that I'm in the hands of creator spirit. So whatever comes my way will be good for me. Thank you.
Okay. Nina?
I have to say the same. I feel, not that I trust everybody, but I always sense like the people with, I don't know, I feel that people that comes to my life is for a good reason, and I learn just to go with the flow. I don't start putting in my mind, you know, like what happened if he's not the real person, or I don't know. I never think, I never put things in my mind to get more confused, because you start asking, if you start with a question, another start jumping up, and I was just go with the flow and trust the highest good.
Okay. Teresa? Well, while we're waiting for Teresa to unmute, I will share a short story from, I think this is from book one, of course, Conversation with God. But God is talking to Neil Donald Walsh, and he said, most people trust their wait server more than they do their God. I thought, that's an interesting statement. And then the conversation continues, you know, the wait server comes over and has a pad and asks each person, what do you want? And this comes with that. And, you know, she writes it down and she's got everybody's order. And then she goes away. Now, soon a busboy will come around. Perhaps he has water, or perhaps he's taking drink orders. And you don't stop him and say, hey, wait a minute, let me tell you what I ordered. I want to tell you what I've asked for. I want to make sure you get it, they get it right. And you check it out. And you repeat your order, and he's, well, I'm just here for your drinks, you know. And then the time passes a little more, and a busboy runs by to clean the next table over, and you stop him and say, hey, kid, listen, I'm worried about my order. I want you to get this straight and take it to the kitchen. And he said, we never do that. We trust that the wait person, the waitress or waiter, has got it right. She's taken it to the kitchen and it'll get back to us. What do we do when we ask God for something? We say the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. Like he can't hear us? He's mentally deficient and doesn't remember what we said? Why do we have to repeat the same requests over and over and over? That's an issue of trust. No, it's an issue of trust. And it may be an indication of impatience as well. This is a side issue. Teresa, you want to give your summary?
I agree with Nina. Nina is a brilliant woman, and I agree with everything she said. Just the same thing, like just looking at the bright side, and like even if you're something you're at first are questioning or something, then look at the positive aspects of it. I like that.
Okay. Does your mom want to say anything? Summarize?
I asked her. She said she's okay.
All right. Any last words? Going once? Going twice? All of you have a wonderful week. See you here. Oh, and next week I'll be dealing with behavior in the north.
Thank you so much, Ksitew.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
You make
Yes.
me
Okay.
Shit.